as we go along. So this is part of EDI week at MacEwan, and I'm excited to be, for the very first time, leading a panel and sharing with you students and staff from MacEwan and the U of A who are going to share their stories about their journeys and bringing their whole selves to the campus. We sometimes think the campus is where you're just doing your academia, but really you're being your whole self there. And how does that work? So so we have three people, although our third person is going to be running a little late today. So we have Dave Winston, who is from Kerala in, did I say that right, Dave? Kerala in South India. He's studying at MacEwan criminology. And we have Simran, who's at the U of A, and she's studying criminology as well. And our third person will be Shulit Kaur Kalawasit, who is from MacEwan, and she's with the Indigenous Center there. So, so what I'm hoping for us to do today is each panelist will give about 10, 12 minutes of a talk, which will be uninterrupted. And we'll start with Dave because Dave is kind enough to fit this in between classes, and he has another class at 12:30. So yeah, so I've known Dave for a couple of years now, and I look forward to the story he shares with you. So I'm gonna just one sec. Is because Dave has to leave early, I'm going to change the rules a little, and if there are some questions that we want to ask of Dave, we'll get them in before he leaves, and then the rest of us can continue as sort of a normal panel where everyone gives their comments, gives their story, and then we comment on it afterwards. So go ahead, Dave. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dana, and I'm very honored that I get to speak on this platform. All right, so hello everyone. My name is Dave, and I'm a fourth-year criminology student at MacEwan. And as Dana mentioned, I am from the southern part of India called Kerala. I grew up there, and I had my education there up until my high school. So a little bit about Kerala. Kerala is a state with a good mix of people from all religious backgrounds, and it makes it stand out from other Indian states because it's kind of like almost you can see the almost equal numbers of all different kinds of different kinds of people from different religious backgrounds. Even though it is very good in representation, Christianity is still a minority group in India, and we promote secularism to avoid religious conflict most of the time. As a kid, I went to Christian schools run by nuns and priests, and it was very good to be in schools like that because they reaffirmed a lot of my faith, but also there was still secularism because they didn't want any religious conflict happening on their institution grounds. So this kind of like gave me a fractured sense of self because I always felt like I had to only carry certain parts of myself in certain situations. Like if I'm going to school, I got to leave my Christian part at home, or if I'm going to church, I have to leave my secular part at home. And I don't know, I always felt like I was wearing different masks for different places. And yeah, and when I finished my high school, I got a chance to come to Canada because we were looking at institutions which could mean, at that time, I wanted to get a degree in biology, and then I got this chance to come to Canada. I looked at institutions that offered a really good biology program, and we came to University of Alberta and McEwan in the shortlist. And I chose McEwan ultimately because it was a smaller university, and I felt like I would have more opportunities to interact with the resources at McEwan. So I I got here. They accepted me into the program, and I was very excited to come to Canada because this was an opportunity um, to meet new people, to experience new culture, and also in the process to know myself better. So I was I was super excited when I got the chance. So um, yeah, so when I came to Canada, it was in the middle of December, so it was already winter season. So there was a little bit of a learning curve dealing with the cold, and but the people here were really nice, and it was really they were really supportive and helped me out a lot to figure out Canadian culture and life here. Um, so and also like this was the first time I was away from my family, so I did experience a little bit of homesickness in the first few months. But there were resources here at McKeon that was very helpful to with that. I I I I went to the International Center and the Wellness and Psychological Center for help at times. They would always be glad to help. And the International Center, especially, they gave me a lot of idea on what to do uh, to have like a smooth transition from India to Canada. And Wellness and Psychological Services helped me with the coping stresses of life. So I was very glad to have them. And then the career guidance counselor, they helped me understand my skills and map them out a bit. And that's how I chose to be in criminology. I was like, oh, I really do like investigations, and I do like helping out people and thinking of solutions for it. So that's one of the that's how they helped me to change my degree, and uh, that's why I'm following in criminology right now. So with all these resources, McEwen's been really good, and the only thing I found lacking here was the absence of a spiritual resource center. I yeah, I was I always had questions because, as I told before, the fractured sense of self, it was very hard to understand who I am without understanding the whole picture, right? So I I was very I mean I was kind of sad because that McEwen didn't have have a lot of student groups helped with um, spiritual growth or spiritual dialogue. So um, I had to um, I had to I had to look for other resources in other institutions. So that's where I found LSM at University of Alberta, and it helped me a lot. Like they meet once every week, and it helped me to express some of the questions and um, some of the uh, some parts of myself that I had trouble uh, expressing. So yeah, and Richard here, he's one of our chaplains at the group, and I'm very glad to have have his guidance too. It's like it was it was very good to have these resources. So yeah, I gained a lot of gained so much from the meetings and the talks that we would have at Awesome. So I was hoping that, McKeven could do something like that in one of these days. And yeah, I still wish that McKeven had resources like UFA to promote healthy faith-based dialogue. And yeah, as a kid, I was always told that going to university is just like the final step to growing and to face the world in a way that is, that you can handle. Like, you're still never too ready to prepare the world, but it helps you a little bit with that. So I have noticed a lot of growth in other skills like talking and building relationships, and I'm very glad that I got that. It's just I believe in growth in a holistic perspective, and I feel like if I neglect some parts of myself and just focus on certain parts, I don't know if I can still call it full growth. So I wish that the university can help me achieve that in the future. And I do hope that in the future I'll be able to have many more faith dialogues that's not just about Christianity, but even interfaith dialogue is something that I feel like I need from the university. And the other important thing is that I would like it to have without judgment, because I've seen that a lot when it comes to faith dialogues. And if I could get involved in those dialogues without having to be judged for it, it would be really good. So yeah, thank you so much again, Dana and Sanpreet, for setting up this platform, and I'm very glad I got to express my thoughts and experiences. Yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Dave. Well, you stayed right within the 10 minutes. So we because you have to leave, I was just hoping if anyone wanted to ask some questions now for Dave, then now is open. If your camera's off, if you could do the wave hand thing, or and then put your camera on to ask your question. Richard.
Yeah, just to clarify, when Dave said LSM, people may not be familiar with those initials and what they mean. It means Lutheran Student Movement, and this is one of over 20 religious clubs that are at the University of Alberta, of different faiths. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I forgot to mention the full form of that. I just mentioned the abbreviation. Yeah.
That's no problem.
Yeah, and also I guess I have a question is that when you came here right away, you were connecting yourself to faith communities. You live at an intentional Christian community house, and so I know part of that was your parents, but like, what did that help you, being like kind of smack dab in the middle of something already?
Well, yeah, the intentional community was something that helped me a lot too, because yeah, the instant connection to a church here in Canada was very useful, because yeah, the people at the church, they were like my family here. They welcomed me, and they offered me resources if I needed, and yeah, it was nice to instantly have like a church that I could go to, or have a community that's like that I didn't have to build up, that was already there, and it's accepted me, even though like I'm a total stranger to them. And I was very excited. I was very happy that I got one of those communities right away. Yeah.
Anybody else? No? Well, thanks so much, Dave. If you still can stay for part of the next talk, great. And if you have to go, it's okay too. Before we go on to Simran, I just wanted to acknowledge that our third speaker is here. This is, now I'm crossing my fingers I say it correctly because I've been practicing, Shuletkwa Kalasuit. And that is her Indian name or Indigenous name, and she is at MacEwan now I can't say this properly, so I'm just going to simplify it, at the Indigenous Center, and she also teaches many things: courses, dance, flute, and drums, and so it'll be great to hear from her. But first, we're going to go on to Simran. All yours. And you're muted.
Awesome. So my name is Simran, and as Dana mentioned, I'm also a fourth year criminology student. But right now I'm on my work term, so I have this semester off, and I'm working in politics just to understand the world and influence whatever I can at this age. I go to the University of Alberta, and my experience with the U of A started off with, I just had a really big interest starting when I was like 17 about research, somehow researching the Sikh faith and like how like Canadian Sikhs have been exposed to the diaspora, how we communicate between England, America, and Canada. That was my interest, which piqued me into political science. That's how I started off my degree as a Sikh student. And I took a criminology class my first year, and I just fell in love with the discipline, which made me switch over my focus on my research. Like, I'm a research assistant at a point during university, but COVID obviously stomped on that. But again, my focus still was around Sikhi, and I think I had the benefit of growing up in a very connected family, connected to the faith, connected to the community. So Sikhi was really entrenched in me from the beginning. But until I got to university, I feel like it was kind of a back burner thought. I wasn't that entrenched into the faith. But when I got into university, I felt like we all feel stresses when we're in university. I feel like for me, like my religion served as a stress relief. And the University of Alberta doesn't have the Sikh Students Association anymore, which it used to have. So as a Sikh student, it was really hard to find other Sikh students to connect to. But there's another group that we created. My friend actually is a founder of it, called Sangit Youth, which is not affiliated with any university, but rather it's any university students could join. And I think that really helped. But again, that was not a U of A club. It's completely separate. But I think that helped with my growth in the religion as well as my growth as a student. Because throughout my journey, I think I've always fallen back on other Sikhs to help me navigate the stresses in my life, like I said, and just to remain calm and sane through university. And then I also think my professors in the criminology department at the U of A have been phenomenal. I've felt no judgment, which is, I'm just talking about my experience, but I have to also acknowledge that I have the privilege. I'm not a baptized Sikh, so I might not look like a Sikh. I don't have a turban. I don't keep certain things that'll make me obvious. So I do have that privilege. So if I'm saying that I felt accepted as a Sikh student at the U of A, I don't think that means everybody does. But I have the privilege of saying that I personally have had the greatest experience with my professors, who have been like cheerleaders on the side as I delved into my religion and like researched and connected to it. The University of Alberta also has a couple of great things. Like, they do have prayer rooms, which have been, they're multi-faith, which I really appreciate. And they have certain religion classes, and you can explore religion through that. But I think what's been vital for me is those community connections that I formed over the last 3 years in university. And it might not be just at U of A, like a couple of my friends from MacEwan and us are all a part of Sangit Youth. And I think that's just helped us move into being able to express our religiosity in a way that's not, I don't know how to word this, but like express our religiosity and not be ashamed of it. Because again, what Dave was saying, like we come into this country, like I'm born here, but my parents are immigrants to this country, and you kind of want to assimilate as soon as possible. You want to fit in. You don't ever want to be the person that stands out. And I think through university, I've gotten to that point where it's like, it's okay to stand out. You're fine. And especially as a Sikh, you're supposed to stand out. That's the whole purpose of how we are supposed to dress and stuff. And then through the last 2 years, I've made, again, like I said, many friends through the various universities that have assisted in my religiosity and learning. And I think the pandemic assisted even more. Specifically for myself, I think the pandemic allowed me some time to breathe and just research the religion and more. And then over the last year, we had the farmers' protests that took place in India, which included people of all faiths, all backgrounds, all colors coming together. And I think that also increased my religiosity, as well as many of my friends think that's when they started turning towards their respective religions just to learn more about it, because they saw this great phenomenal thing, like the world's largest protest happen right in front of us. So I think that was all very unique. And I think throughout the last year, like 2 years actually now, my brain goes 2020 and then 2022. I forget that 2021 happened. But I think over the last 2 years, I've become more conscious of how vital religion is in my life, and how I made friends and connections in the community that are involved in Sikhi, and I've gotten more involved through just understanding that I'm allowed to be religious, and it's not something to be shameful of. It's not something that we have to hide. Especially today, I feel like a lot of people we're trying to assimilate and try to be all the same and not stand out. But I think over the last 2 years, I've kind of come out of my shell, and the university professors and my student group that's not associated with the university though have been vital in that. And I know if I talk to people that went to the U of A like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the Sikh Students Association did exist, and it was really important for those students. They said that they made connections there for a lifetime. And I think that's one thing that the U of A is missing now. And I would really appreciate something for us to have there so we can connect. Because I feel like a lot of us come into university and we don't know who to ask these questions to. As like we can't ask our parents because usually they're working, because they're immigrants. They're trying to provide a life for us. And I feel like we have this missing link. And I feel like the U of A needs to bring that back somehow to make sure our students aren't getting lost in the void. And I think that's under 10 minutes, but that's all I have to say. If anybody has.
Yeah, you do have 3.5 minutes left, but actually, even though I was gonna do the two of you together, there was just a wonderful question here, and it's from Prima Samuel, who's asking, can the panelists talk a little bit about the nature of being drawn to the cultural community for support as you arrive in a foreign land? For you, you're not arriving in a foreign land, but you have that connection, right? Have you intentionally reached out to them, and your reason for seeking out, and what it means to continue to be connected as you get comfortable here?
So I can't speak on people that come here, but I can speak for like myself. I personally did reach out to a couple of people just to feel like I belong, but also I feel like balancing that double identity as, am I a Sikh or am I a Canadian, and trying to merge those identities, I think was the most difficult part for me. But I think there's a lot of great resources out now, and like a lot of institutions, and like stuff like this is how we get those conversations going, I think. And like reaching out to culture. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure. I can't see the whole thing on my screen for some reason. But yes, I think that like drawn to community support is something that I feel like a lot of people grapple with, especially people of color, because they don't know where they're supposed to fall on the spectrum. And I think community is really important for that.
Simran, that's great, and we'll still be coming back to you for questions after our next panelist. So again, this is Shaletqua Kolosuit. I'm sorry, Kolosuit from McEwen, and she is of Salish, Cree, and Hawaiian ancestry, and has an amazing story to share with us all. So I'm going to let her go ahead.
Thank you. Shulakwa Kalasuit Inchas, Huehuanak and Statlium Holmuk people. I hail from, from the neighboring landscape of British Columbia. That's known as British Columbia. We have traditional names for all these places. I think what people forget is that there are hosting nations here. The very land we're on is Treaty 6 territory, and the very land that in the neighboring community, there's, Treaty 7, Treaty 8, there's unceded territories of Indigenous people. What is not disseminated and not known to a lot of people is there's a rich history of spirituality and connection, in-depth connection to the land, to the flyers, swimmers, walkers, rooted ones, and to the fire, earth, air, and to the water as well. My experience, I'm a residential school survivor. Me and my three sisters went in Mission, BC. My mother and my father went to Mission, the old St. Mary's, and then my grandmother went. So I have 3 solid generations, 75 years of conditioning, of killing the Indian in me. The politically correct term of that time is Indian, but we are indigenous to these lands. We've held a high concentration of spirituality that was in tune with the circular cycle process of natural law. And informed by this spirituality, it brought upon things like health, taking care of ourselves, happiness, humbleness, forgiveness, honesty, understanding, kindness, patience, love, determination, courage. So many values and principles hail from the many teachings of the land, of the water, of the earth, of the air, of the rooted, of the flyers, of the swimmers, of the other walkers, including each other. Our relationship induces a learning from each other. And that was all part of our culture and part of our spirituality, staying in good relationship to one another, keeping that balance and having that reciprocity of we gain knowledge from each other and we reciprocate that knowledge with love and light. I think my story begins my earliest memories of being a child in trauma. And this was being induced by the colonial system, the Indian Act, by the reservation system, by the foster care system, by the Gradual Civilization Act, by all of that. And although I'm well versed because I forced myself to go to school, even after residential school, I didn't like it because of the spaces weren't safe. Those spaces weren't open for my physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual body to move through it. It felt more like slivers. It felt more like bee stings of, not allowing my presence to fully culminate and grow and flourish and be nourished, but rather to live inside a categorized, hierarchical sort of thinking instead of a relational family thinking. So in moving through the spaces of the U of A, where I went as a grandmother, I gained my degrees as a grandmother. After years of raising children and raising grandchildren, I went back to school, gained 3 degrees in a short time span of 5.5 years. Realizing that if I can take my culture in one hand and my spirituality and take the Western system in one hand, I could really negotiate and trying to find those spaces and how we could open it up more. My idea would be to have Indigenous people and all people, a spiritual center in every building where they can stop, where they can, if I would have had that moving through school, I would have been so much more nourished, so much more holistically well, instead of going to bed with tears and a heavy heart and my mind in a heavy way. If we walk through hallways and then we see a spiritual center for all spiritual practices, where it's open to all people. And that's the Indigenous way. That's one of our laws of life, of acceptance, of being able to nourish each other's giftedness in what they have to bring to the hosting territory, which in this territory is Cree, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. This is their gathering area. This is where they used to welcome nations for trading. They would pick medicines, they would trade. Like Dr. Dwayne Donald speaks of the pimento theory of a painting over top another culture. It's still here, it's still existing. The spirit of the land is still here, the spirit of the water, the spirit of the earth, the fire, the air is still here, waiting to be acknowledged. And that's what I truly believe and think still to this day. I find those pockets of spaces. If we could just challenge everybody to find a piece of land where they can relate to and begin to culminate their way of their spiritual connection. I think that as a residential school survivor whose earliest memories are of trauma, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, all kinds of abuses, spiritual abuse I've gone through since as far back as I can remember being a year and a half and being taken away to residential school, forced to be this square. First thing that happened is cut my hair off. My spiritual belief believes that you have your hair long to be nourished by the rootedness that you held from. Even something like that, you know, having that freedom taken away of being who you really are. Being molded by society that is a square thinking, hierarchical thinking, where patriarchy is ahead of matriarchy, all sorts of resonations of this unhealthiness that makes people sick and ill. The aunties would take us if they seen this on us, and they would bring us back to the land. They would bring us to the water to rebalance us. This is a way of seeing the world and thinking. And as a grandmother, I'm so thankful to be in this circle with everybody. Those spaces of support that I found were within making a phone call to my mother and praying together in our way, smudging, even though we can't smudge in the buildings there at the U of A, but at Grant MacEwan you can. And that's really, like the first day that I was here, I smudged 6 times and I was just rejoicing inside myself of the freedom of being able to be me, being able to take that space in a way that where people want you to take that space. They don't want you to have to fight for it. They don't want you to feel like there's slivers in your body of resistance, but they want you to be who you are. And I think, you know, my work here at Grant MacEwan is like Kihia Watston, that's Cree for Eagle's Nest. It's where people, our children, our relatives can come to rest. It's a home away from home. Doesn't matter where they come from, what color, race, creed, sexuality, anything. They can come and rest and be who they are. Even the way the building is shaped in circularness, the lights are shaped like the Northern Lights. It resonates who we are and it allows people that space to be who they are. We can smudge in here, we can be who we are. So, you know, at the U of A, if they would just provide that space for all spiritual practices to not feel that slivering up against their body or that bee stings of you can't do this, you know, you're going against the privileged, and I'm going to say this in a very gentle way, a colonial, white, patriarchal privileging. The structures still resonate that. And we're taking apart little pieces and we shouldn't have to. Those pieces should be taken away for us in acknowledgement of that sensitivity, the safety, the awareness, and the competency. Those things need to be built into this whole system. It's very dehumanizing. And I think once we go back to that relationship building and listening to one another and understanding, this world could be so much better. These spaces would be so much nourishing and accommodating for one another. So thank you for listening to me. That's my splee over 10 minutes. And come visit me if you want to hear more. I love you all. And, you know, I send light and love to each and every one of you. And I wish you all the best and pray that on your path, the right people, the right places, the right things fall on your path that nourish who you are in full breath, holistically, you know. And I've lived my life long enough as a grandmother to realize when I'm blessed, because I feel truly blessed sitting in this circle, being here with so many people that are, whether they're exploring or they're determined in where they stand, and I'm celebrating with you. You know, count me in if it's creating space, because I'm there, okay? I'll wear my shawl and dance up to make more space, or sing my songs, or drum my drum, or play my flute, or just say some prayers of good energy sending out. Because of the energy, the land we're on, it carries a beautiful energy that is medicine to everybody that stands on it. If you listen close enough and meditate long enough, you hear the stories of the land. You hear what the land needs. You hear what the people need. That's why they say if you can take your shoes off for a minute and walk on the land, it nourishes you with medicines through your feet, through the spirit. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dana.
Yes.
So I feel so privileged to sit in this circle and to share a little bit about who I am. I would love to see those centers in every building where it's that normal. It's that normal and that accepting and that kind and that humble, that there's no superiority over the other. We're all here as a human race, and we all have gifts to share and braided into the most beautiful designed basket. Every culture, every spiritual sort of way of thinking. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to let everyone know that I am going to be giving Shalatkwa Kalwasawit some fabric, floral fabric, so she can make some skirts and some tea. And I wanted to make sure I didn't bring something right away when I met her yesterday, but then I asked, and that was a good thing, because there's different customs about what to give when people are sharing in this way, and how important it is to acknowledge the gift of each other, but the gift of each other with a gift too. So yeah, so we have quite a long time actually. Well, we have 15 minutes. So does anybody have any questions for our two panel members left, Simran and Shalat Kalawassit? Go for it, or put it in the chat and I'll read it out loud. Well, I have a question. It could be for either of you, and that is, you mentioned it, but Simran, you kind of commented on it more easily because you said you're not a baptized Sikh yet, right? So, but like, has there been places where you have figured out the ways that that you can have your whole self, or do you feel like sometimes you just split yourself off for certain classes? And
I can speak to that. I think in high school, my friend group was predominantly Sikh, so I don't think I had that problem. But in elementary and junior high, I used to do that. And in university, I feel like I also have the privilege of being in arts, so I feel like there's more of a judgment in the sciences. Like that might just be my perception of how things are, but I feel like in my degree and my field, I don't feel that. I feel like I can bring my whole self into campus. So I don't do that anymore. But like outside of school, there is still some places where I'm like, do I feel comfortable sharing my full identity here? Am I going to be discriminated against if somebody finds out? So there is places, but I think the campus has become a safe place for me as of right now.
And have you found any clashes in a way by being a second generation Canadian, and then you know, like, so you're still so connected in a way to India?
Yeah. Yes, but it's like a complicated thing, I feel like, to think about, because my parents have tried so hard to keep us really connected to like Punjab, but at the same time, they've also emphasized like, we're in this country, you have to accommodate for here. So I feel like that clash with them too, because sometimes they have like a really Punjabi perspective on things, and then sometimes they have a really Western perspective, and mine might switch. Like sometimes I might have a really Punjabi perspective on something that they're Western about, and then like vice versa. So there is still points of contention as a second generation, I think. And then there's also like, you feel guilty for doing something that might not fit everything, but like there's no rules about it because those things didn't exist there that exist in Canada or like the Western world, I think, which is interesting. So I feel that clash for sure.
Yeah. And Koala, what's it? Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm just going to say Cynthia, because every time I start to say it, I'm mangling it. My apologies. But when you said that you felt the needles, or you know, pricking you and scraping on you, and then you mentioned the call with your mom, I think it was. But what were other ways? Like, I remember you telling me yesterday how you were in the hallways and you were just kind of not overwhelmed, but it made you not feel fit in when you looked at these pictures of white men who were part of the founding of the university, and how when was that shift always happening because you had to deal with it, or, you know, like, why? Yeah.
Definitely, to a T, explains when I walk and negotiate space in all of this, in this whole system, the concrete, the buildings, everything is square, everything is hierarchical, everything is categorized, everything is defined. Whereas with Indigenous teachings, gifts, our holistic education system is more naturalistic. The elders would watch the children, and these were the matriarchs. They would watch the children and identify where their giftedness was, and then provide appropriately the right mentors, the right direction for them to go. And it was more naturalistic. So walking down these halls and seeing the system that was built on a privileged positions, patriarchy positions, white, and I say that in the most gentle way because I'm not, you know, I'm just very aware of those. That's what the prickles talk of. They talk of every space I take up, it's already dictated. It's determined by somebody that has been in a privileged position that imposes belief systems, norms, ideologies, notions upon people. And that's why it's important that we have diversity in universities to speak up, to take up space, to start pushing back on those slivers, to start removing those slivers. And so when I walked down that hall, and right from the first earliest dates of the university, all I seen was white male pictures, one after the other. There was no Indigenous, there was no East Asian, there was no other cultures evident, which goes to tell you the very foundations that this is built on, which makes it equally important that we need our allies. We need our beautiful allies that are in privileged positions to help decolonize the spaces in so many ways. So we come across some of us are gifted with audacity and determination, where others are gifted with patience and kindness to create those braids and linkages, to pull people in, to get them to buy into the idea, hey, you know, this is what's going on. This is how it's impacting humanity. And to come across with, and my guiding principles that make me move through these spaces, I choose not to pick up an axe and start slashing away like the old days, right? But today, kindness goes a long way. Honoring one another, coming to that same similar space and understanding one another. You know, it's that type of, and if you couldn't do that back in the day when those universities were being formed, instead you were squashed. Your voice was squashed. You were tucked in a corner. You're not relevant. You're not valuable. Your perspective is nothing. Oh, you're a woman. Oh, you're Indigenous. You're savage-like. And to this day, the lack of Indigenous presence still says that. You're not worthy enough. You're savage-like still, because these structures are informed by that thinking. And when I say structures, I don't just mean physical, I mean in our mind. It's like mining of our minds into thinking what is authority, what is real, and what the way it should be. It's mining of our minds. And if we allow that, people that are vulnerable, they buy into it. And that's why we have to create those safe spaces. That's how important it is to create those safe spaces, to say, hey, be who you are. And what gift, I'd love to hear about what gift that you could teach me, and let's share, let's break bread together. Let's sing a song together. Let's create a song together. I was in the World Music Ensemble there at the U of A, where we played for human rights, and we also played for the Aga Khan when he came to visit, and I played with other artists, East Asian, I played with all cultures. I don't even know all the names of, but it was beautiful. It sounded beautiful. As I played my First Nations flute, and then we had the zitar, then we had the didgeridoo, then we had all of this culminating. It was gorgeous, and it was so beautifully satisfying to my soul to see that's how we intertwined in all our beauty and love and light. And yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. I meant to talk about that, and you know, that really resonates the way I feel walking through these spaces. Yeah. And yeah, instead of walking on the land, we're walking on concrete, so it's harder to really link in with the essences and the spirit of the land, of the water. Like that, we have a project going that we're going to replant natural berries in all of Edmonton that once flourished here, but we're having a ceremony on it first to call back the spirit of those berries. Please have pity on us and come nourish us again. It's things like that, yeah, that these spaces are opening up for us and to do those things.
Yeah. And maybe this is a question for both of you, or whoever feels like. I wonder about like statistics. Like we were talking yesterday about how there still are low statistics for Indigenous students coming to the U of A or NAIT or McEwen, and where could that, like if they already are at the place where they don't want to be in school, how could they want to come to university or post-secondary? Like what kinds of things, what kind of reach could there be before they even consider post-secondary studies?
I have what a lot of Canadians do not know is that there was laws created in the formation of Canada right from the beginning to oppress and suppress Indigenous people. And these multiple laws, Gradual Civilization Act, which assumed that we were savage-like and we needed to be educated in the white privileged way, Residential school was another legislation which took me from my mom when I was 5 and mandated me to go into these schools or else my parents would be arrested. The last school closed in 1996 in Mission, BC. That was the last legislated school to kill. The object was Duncan A. Campbell. In his words, in his diaries and journals, it was to kill the Indian in every child. And the politically correct term, Indian meaning indigenous people of this land. So in finding those in doing those legislations and forcing people to be distorted and not human-like according to their lands, according to their natural law and process, distorted and really victimized. So we're in the state of generational healing now. There was generational trauma, and I had to navigate and negotiate my way through healing myself, thankful to my beautiful mother who carried the teachings. Now we're moving slowly into generational healing, but what people don't know is that we had over 100 years of intentional abuse upon Indigenous people, intentional laws, even as fresh as Bill C-31, which is designed to create no Indigenous people in Canada, no more so-called status. We're the only people in the whole world that have to carry a card to identify that we're Indigenous. We're the only people in the world that were designed. We were looked at, the Nazi God himself, Hitler, used the design of how Canadian government treated Indigenous people and how he treated the Jewish people in the Holocaust. Not too many people know that. It's founded in his journals. So a lot of Canadians do not know the true history of Indigenous people and what went down and still is resonant and evident in every day. The very land that we stand on belongs to the Cree Treaty 6 territory. We're all bound by this treaty because the government acted on your behalf, settlers' behalf, and they're supposed to honor treaties like in exchange for dwelling and settling on the land, education, health, social development, providing all kinds of food because they killed all the buffalo on the land. But there's so much more to be told. Because I teach at UVic, government levels, teaching about sensitivity, safety, awareness, and competency training for non-Indigenous sections. And so I know both worlds, the ceremony world and the education world. And this is where I'm at right now with sensitivity, safety, awareness, and competency training. I'm trying to bring both worlds to an understanding. And I'm so thankful that, my good grandmothers before me has set me up with this determination in a gentle way, not in an audacious way that offends so many people, but in a way that culminates kindness and patience. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. Sorry, and thank you to Dave in his class already. But I think it's really important to have these kind of conversations, and it's so great how everybody has a different experience, and we need to keep having these talks, I think. And I think we do need to be our whole selves wherever we go, but especially in education. And so I'm very grateful to you all for sharing your stories and for the few questions that we have. Oh, Richard wrote a quick question. The U of A has a multi-faith prayer and meditation space. Last week, the Jewish student Hillel held a festival, Purim there. Muslim students pray in there throughout the space, throughout each day. Sponsored by the Muslim Student Association. The Buddhist chaplain held meditation there before COVID. A small group from business used the space for a smudging ceremony to begin a class last week, but the rooms were not designed with proper ventilation to allow for larger smudging ceremonies. And so then he asked, but I think we won't be able to get into this, but that he's saying, is this privileging some over others? And when we speak of a place that is a circle to welcoming all, how do we see that being created? And those are huge questions that I don't think we can accomplish in the next 1 minute, but it's good to hear that and to realize we still have a long way to go. But what I think is special is that we're talking to each other, and I'm really grateful for that. So thank you all. Thank you to our audience out there, I will end our time now. Thank you so much.
I speak quickly.